Neeraj Shine. Over the next 20 minutes, we'll talk about two or three very interesting topics, one of which was, of course, indicated to me on social media by some of you. And then a couple of other things which I thought were intriguing. So we thought it best to get in two experts to try and talk about these, Prableen Bajpai and Gurmeet Chadda. They need no introduction. They've been on this show now a number of times, and glad to have both of them back. Lady and gentlemen, great having both of you back.
Thanks, Neeraj.
All right, let's start off with the first topic at hand. And I think what's intrigued, not intrigued really, but what has caught the eye of a number of people are the variety of funds that are getting launched, right? If SEBI classification simplified categories, now there are newer ones coming up, and in exciting areas, I might add, which might lead people to believe that, hey, let's try and take an exposure via this route to some of those opportunities. Probably let's start off with you. What is it that you observed in terms of recent offerings which are unique, which are in the new space or otherwise, which have caught your eye, and where you have a strong opinion?
Thanks, Neeraj, for having me on the show. Great to be here. Absolutely, I think 2021, we've seen so many, the new fund offers coming in and so many schemes which are filed with SEBI for approval. And other than the fact that a lot of them are actually passive strategies, I think there's another section, which is because global investing is actually catching up. And through global investing, newer themes which are not available in India, I think that's one, gateway which is opened up. And within that, I would say things like, concentrated portfolios now are possible to companies, semiconductor companies, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, blockchain. These were things which were never available to Indian investors via the mutual fund route, and that's there. And I think two strategies, of course, these are kind of second tier products, Neeraj, because a lot of us in terms of AUMs actually hold very, very little portion of our allocations outside India. So actually, this is like the second level. Within India, you first build a core, like your large caps and mid caps, and then you go into the satellite. These are also the satellite components as far as global investing goes. But definitely, it's, I think, a great segment now because these themes have not been available. And I particularly like the segment of electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles now, which will be available through 3 different fund houses outside.
Yeah, you obviously none of these are open for subscription as yet, right? Probably. So I'm guessing they're upcoming in the future.
Yes, not yet, Neeraj, but like Nippon, it would be there's the electric vehicle index, which Nippon would be tracking. So that's the S&P index, which is going to give exposure. Then Mirai, I think what they're going to do is they're going to take exposure to 3 different kind of ETFs outside. One probably would be something on China electric vehicle segment, because China is a huge market, especially in electric buses, which is actually the fastest growing segment within electric vehicles also. And I think they already have, their parent has Global X, Mirai has a product which is in electric vehicles. So I think that would be track as well as autonomous vehicles. And the third one, the Navi, that one also would be tracking one of the global EV and driving technology indices outside. So it's going to be very interesting, I think, this segment, especially given the fact that, bigger companies, manufacturers outside, like a Volkswagen, they say they by 2039, they will be carbon neutral. And then you have Ford, which is going to invest about 30 billion by 2025. And they say that 40% of the global electric, car segment would be electric by 2030. So I think there's a lot of potential in this particular segment, and work has already started. So we are below 5% globally in terms of cars which are electric, but a recent one in August, Bain report says that 12% will be electric by 2025. So that's going to be a huge jump. And not only cars, Neeraj, the interesting part is that buses, even in India, we are seeing more and more electric buses. China, of course, is leading the way, as well as trucks. I think trucking is another industry, where you can get exposure, where autonomous level 3, level 4 trucks are coming, as well as electric trucks. So I think this is one segment I really liked.
Okay, so some of these funds, viewers, remember, Prableen doesn't have a view as yet about whether she will take exposure to any of these funds or no, but they seem exciting enough. Yeah. And once the documents are out there, they could be very exciting to monitor. Gurmeet, what about you? Electric vehicles is one, cryptos another. There are some other very varied kind of global offerings that are also coming into play. I'm guessing they're all global in nature, which is why what makes them exotic. What's your sense? Gurmeet, I think you're on mute, of course, so you'll have to unmute yourself. But what's your sense on some of these new offerings? What has caught your eye?
So, Neeraj, we have to, I'm excited at the same time, a little cautious. Reason being that, these are typical bull market, phenomena. You get new strategies. Am I audible? Sorry.
Yeah.
I think there is an audio issue. Am I audible?
Yes, Gurmeet, you are.
Yeah.
Gurmeet, we can hear you. I think there is a bit of a connectivity issue to me, so we'll just try and patch that. Probably, can I just ask you a quick follow-up? Is there anything in the crypto space that you've looked at? I think Invesco launched something that has filed for. Anything else? Because crypto is front and center of attention for everybody.
Actually, Neeraj, like now two of them. Navi has also launched, kind of filed for the blockchain index. So we often link the blockchain technology and, of course, cryptocurrencies. So there is no direct exposure, of course, to cryptocurrencies, but through the Invesco. And I think the reason why it was, it has been pushed forward also is because it has exposure to one of the Canadian companies, which is actually into mining. So, and as well as, Coinbase, which is a crypto exchange. So because I think of these exposures, there's a bit of a regulatory hurdle right there. But the other one, which I think Navi has filed for, would be tracking a blockchain index. And there, it's majority of technology companies which are constituents of that index.
Okay. Gurmeet, I think we have you back. I heard you say that you're a bit cautious and excited at the same time. What has excited you? Where are you cautious?
So, Neeraj, I think as Pravleen said, it has to be satellite. These are more for some evolved customers. So while, I think for the basic customers, since a lot of them are international, you are happy with an S&P 500 or an MSCI emerging market passive strategy. I think that should do the job. And you should not get carried away seeing returns because we miss out the correlation aspect, right? So S&P has a very lowest correlation. One idea a couple of ideas which caught my eye was, Taiwan fund which Nippon came up with. And not just because there is semiconductor shortage. I think the composition of the index and the way companies, the global majors, whether it is Amazon, whether it is all the EV majors, are dependent on chips. And the wider electronic industry usage on Taiwan. In fact, I did an analysis that 5 years is actually beaten Nifty by 100 basis points, even on currency terms. Right, so that is something for a more evolved client. I'm looking at this migration to EV. I know global chip shortage is a phenomenon which is unlikely to get addressed. Maybe a small part can go there. Also, some of the smart beta strategies, not just offshore fund. You had low volatility alpha ETFs. Right, then Kotak came up with an alpha index, Nifty 50 alpha index. Right, I think these smart beta strategies could later on constitute a decent chunk of your overall allocation, because we are seeing funds struggling to beat the benchmark. And then these funds offer you, it's a crossover, right, between active and passive, keeps the cost low. There is a factor-based methodology, so it's more easier to understand vis-a-vis. Right, so this is something again, but as I said, more for evolved clients. A normal investor is happy with a simple Nifty 50 ETF or an equal 50 ETF. But maybe the little evolved ones who want a little alpha can go for some of these, smart beta strategies.
Would smart beta be risky as well, Gurmeet, or would you reckon that they could find a place in a normal retail investor's portfolio? Because I remember DSP, since a long time, has been talking about some of these funds. Some of them have done really well too. So is smart beta also as exotic, or is it kind of bordering between normal and exotic?
So again, within that also, there are various factor based. So let's say it's a simple, smart beta strategy like, it's an equal Nifty 50, easier to understand, all stocks equal weightage. Now, if you have, let's say, low volatility alpha index, it's not easier to understand.
Sure.
I'm saying the core issue here is understanding the product, and a lot of us invest without understanding it, and I think it's the core of it. But you're right, it's bordering. So simpler ones are maybe bordering more towards the core. A more complex and exotic ones are bordering more towards the satellite part, I would say.
Fair call. Okay. Thanks so much, both of you, for giving us some of those updates. Viewers, remember, the things haven't come in as yet, but I thought it was pertinent time. And since some of you were talking about some of the offerings that are coming out, we thought it best to discuss this. Now, the other big thing, and we keep on talking about it every third, fourth show, but I think so many people want to know about it. Gurmeet, I'll start this piece with you, and we'll do a bit of a rapid fire for the next 3 topics. First, for people who still have money in fixed deposits, and there are a bunch of them I know, who still say, taxation में issue पड़ेगा, कौन इतना monitor करे, why is the returns are not really that great or a fixed deposit, why should I break my fixed deposit and put it into funds? Do you want to prove them wrong? Are there options, Gurmeet, which are simpler and better?
Yeah. Definitely, Neeraj, there are options. And I think, way the debt mutual fund industry is evolved, I think, in my view, it is underappreciated and less discussed the way we discuss equity. So I think there's one category of funds which has really caught my attention is this target maturity funds, right? The target maturity funds for viewers is where your horizon exactly matches the maturity of the fund, so that there is no, interest rate risk if you held the portfolio to maturity. So, and the good part is now you have options available, Neeraj, across tenures. So there is from 2023 till 2032, you have options available, right? So you can match your, let's say so anything which is long-term, I would define, which is 3 years and plus. I think it gives you indexation benefits. So if you're coming in December, and let's say there is a yield of 6%, the post-tax yield with 4 indexation would be 570, 580, taking, let's say, 4-5% inflation. That is almost like an 8-9% LP if somebody is at the highest tax slab. So people who are at the highest tax slab or even at 20% tax slab, if your horizon is more than 3 years, I think target maturity funds make sense. There is a combination. There is a AAA portfolio available. There is a government bond plus AAA portfolio available. There is an SDL, which is state government bond and AAA portfolio available. So you have choices. And since these are largely AAA and sovereign papers, the credit quality is relatively better. Yes, there can be intermittent volatility. And Neeraj, after a long time, we are seeing term premium in the market. So we had a flattish yield curve for a long period of time, right? So there was no incentive on going long on the yield curve. Today, if you go a little long, above 5 years on the yield curve, the term premium, which is basically the difference between, let's say, a 8-year, 10-year bond and a 3-year bond, is 200 basis points. So let's say a 3-year AAA bond today is 5%, for example. But if you get a 6-7 years, a state development paper or a good PSU paper, you may get 650, 670, 680, right? So there is a term premium, and that term premium, I think, is worth it. But as I said, provided your horizon has to be, a little more than 3 years. Shorter horizon, I agree with you. At least for the next 3-6 months, the arbitrage isn't much there between, let's say, normal debt funds and fixed deposits.
Yeah, and viewers, please keep in mind your tax bracket as well before you take any plunge here. But logically, there should be some movement away from this. Prabheen's answers, I think, Gurmeet, almost match yours from what I understand. But Prabheen, you want to add something?
No, I totally echo. I think what Gurmeet has said, totally underutilized. I think the debt segment, overall, there's always, you can claim the, capital gains, Neeraj, this component, that, you can even set it off against your losses. I think that's not utilized. And there's so many options within the debt segment. And I think the newest, these target maturity products, I think, are wonderful. You can actually just decide this is for next 5 years, this is for the next 7 years, and then set. Of course, you have to kind of sit through the volatility which will be there. But still, I think that predictability of returns, what they offer, is a great thing with the indexation benefit.
For sure. Okay, just wondering, Prableen, Gurmeet, both of you, any specific 1 or 2 options very quickly? Let's work with some assumptions. A person is in the high tax bracket and is willing to invest for 3 years, 5 years or beyond. Any 1 or 2 names that you could suggest? They're great for people. People love these names. So, Prableen, can I come to you first very quickly on that?
Passives, if they're looking at a more passive kind of an approach, so there's no particular product which is coming to mind. But yeah, these passive strategies by IDFC are there. Then Edelweiss has. So these can be definitely picked because you are looking at 3-year plus horizon.
Yes.
Even they're actually 2023, I think the yield is 4.75% currently. The Bharat bond, which is maturing in 2023, which is not too far, which is quite good for a debt product currently. And of course, for shorter and up to 3 years, you always have corporate bond, low duration products. But currently, Neeraj, the duration that has to be kept in mind, because again, this time RBI again has been very kind, no interest rate hike, but we are heading, we've been saying this, but we are at the point where we will see a hike in the interest rates going forward.
Gurmeet, options from you, Gurmeet?
Yeah, so two options here, to be precise. So if your horizon is, let's say, around 3-4 years, there is this SDL plus PSU index fund of Birla, 2025, 2026 kind of maturity. The YTMs are upwards of 630, 640. So I'm going with the term premium, Neeraj, which I pointed out. And then there is Bharat bond, as Prableen was pointing out. 2030 is almost 680. 2032 is almost 687. Now 687, 680 on a post-tax basis, I think would be 640, 650, assuming 4-5% inflation. And let me add that assumption, which I think is, if I'm at the highest slab for me, it's like a 9-10% kind of a long-term, deposit. And the composition, the maturity. So I think intermittent volatility would be there as probably. But if you hold on to it, that's why the name targeted maturity, I think we should be broadly okay.
So yeah, approach with a clear goal, viewers, and then there are multiple options which could actually serve your needs across multiple tenors, multiple tax advantages, and multiple maturity dates as well. So lots of options out there. Do your homework, and I think you can do very well. Finally, Gurmeet, to you first on this whole thing around liquid funds, which were always considered to be ultra safe. And a couple of people have written that why is it that the fund has this tag of moderate risk? So I was like, okay, I'll ask the two of you to talk about that. Any thoughts here, Gurmeet?
So, SEBI came up with this risk classification metrics, Neeraj, which was supposed to get implemented from 1st of December. I think that's created a bit of some bit of confusion, I would say. So they basically have two slabs. One is on the credit risk, which is A, B, and C. And then there is 1, 2, and 3, which is on the duration risk, which are predominantly two kinds of dominant kinds of risk in that market. So what has happened is that liquid funds by nature can invest up to 90 days, let's say, right? Typically, it's about 60 days, 65 days, but they can go up to 90 days. And a lot of time they buy, CPs and smaller maturity papers, which can be A1 rated in the short term, but could be AA rated in the long term. A lot of NBFCs has bonds, which are A1, which is the highest safety at the shorter end, less than 1 year rating, but they're still AA. Shriram, I can give you a lot of examples. But the matrix takes into account the long-term rating. So if your long-term rating is AA and your short-term rating is A1, it classifies you as second level of risk. That's why the risk becomes moderate from low. I think nothing has really changed materially as far as the composition is concerned. You should definitely focus on these risk ratings, but a good short-term rating and a AA rating isn't too much a cause of a concern. And vice versa has happened. A lot of short-term and banking PSU debt funds have become slightly, on the other side. So just go through it. Nothing materially, in my view, has changed as far as this classification goes.
Got it. Probably we wrap the show with your thoughts. Anything that you would want to talk about when it comes to why a moderate risk?
Something similar, Neeraj, that earlier what we had in 2020, that on credit risk, on your liquidity risk, and on your interest rate risk, these schemes were given these markings. So if it's a AAA, then you had a certain value given to you. If the duration is longer, then there is a certain value given, and cumulatively based on these, your risk profile is calculated, and which was coming on the riskometer. And now there is an additional layer which has come, which takes into account the credit risk and the interest rate risk. So like, I'll give you an example. There's an IDFC fund which is going to be launched. Now it is like a duration of about 6 years. So the interest rate risk will be high there, and the credit risk is low. So it would be classified as interest rate wise it's low A, but interest rate wise it's high, so it becomes 3, but credit risk wise it's low risk, so it becomes A. So there's this new structure which has come, but I think it will give a lot of clarity, because it becomes a filter. If you're looking to invest in a liquid fund and it is moderate risk, you can actually go and check why it is moderate risk. So I think it's a wonderful way for investors to know, okay, I want to go and just cross check why that. is there. And there is a lot of difference between the credit ratings for companies because predictability is there in the shorter term. So of course, a company which is maybe having a A1 plus rating may just be AA or AA negative as well when holding for a 7 to 8 year horizon. So I think it just becomes a great filter, and investors need not be worried at this stage. But I think it's good to go and check why the certain rating is given, or the risk profile is there.
No need to worry, but yeah, certainly a cause for you to go out and try and assess before you make that investment as well. Great. Prableen, Gurmeet, both of you, thank you so much for taking the time out and giving us some thoughts around 2 or 3 key topics. Lovely having both of you.
Thanks, Neeraj.
And viewers, thanks for tuning into this leg of the Mutual Fund Show.